Let me stop the recording for now.
Well, welcome everybody. Hopefully you are in the right place. This is the Town of San Anselmo Hub Study. And basically we are here tonight to look at the hub and potential solutions, multimodal solutions to fixing an issue that's been longstanding. I've been here for 13, 14 years, and we've talked about this probably since I've been here, in looking at everything from roundabouts to flyovers and things like that. As I'm sure everybody here is aware of, the hub has been a consternation for cars, peds, and bikes alike. And a number of years ago, the town applied for and got a grant from TAM, and the grant has allowed us to do this study, and the council approved that study, and that's why we're here tonight. We actually had a meeting, I believe back in May, our first meeting with the community, and we're here tonight to actually get more input from the community, and there will be a number of polls tonight, but let me introduce everybody. I skipped that over. So I'm Sean Condry, I'm the Public Works and Building Director. We also have Scott Schneider, who's the Assistant Director. And then we have Dimitri Laptev, who is running our meeting, who's hiding. There he goes right there. He's a project coordinator. And with Dave Parisi, or Parisi and Associates tonight, we have Dave Parisi, Mac and Jen are here. And we also have Brian Colbert, who's one of our council members and also the vice chair of TAM. And looks like, I just want to see who's online. It looks like we might have Steve Bertle here, who's another council member. Trying to see if there's any other council members here. We have a number of people that looks like. So with that, Brian, if you'd like to say something.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Thanks to you and the team. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Hub the Hub Study number 2. My name is Brian Colbert, council member of the Hamlet of San Anselmo. In addition to serving on town council, I'm the vice chair of the Transportation Authority of Marin and a director of Marin Transit. These 3 roles provide me with a unique perspective regarding the local and regional significance of the hub. At a high level, the hub is the nexus between Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, Red Hill Avenue, and Center Boulevard. It connects West Marin with San Rafael and the Ross Valley. Over the years, there have been congestion issues resulting in requests for improvements, suggestions for the hub, which is why we're here tonight. The hub study, while seemingly overdue, comes at a fortuitous time as our communities individually and collectively are grappling with the following: changing transportation patterns, in part due to the significant growth of at-work home activities due to COVID, an increased volume of bike and pedestrian travel, increased electric bikes use, accentuated by an increasing focus from Sacramento. The next budget, there's money being put aside to promote electrical bike use, and the increasing cost of school bus service, resulting in families considering shifting their children from utilizing the bus services to purchasing electric bikes. Finally, automated vehicles, which are poised to share our roads as well. Not only must we balance local and regional needs, we must balance our current needs with an eye to the future of transportation for our entire community. Finally, I'd like to thank everyone for being here and sharing your thoughts and opinions. And Sean, before I turn it back over to you, I'd just like to acknowledge a couple other members in the community. I see Chance Catrano. He's also a member of TAM, council member from Fairfax. We also have Renee Goddard, who's a council member from Fairfax. I believe those are the only other people that you may have missed. And with that, I'd also like to thank all of our participants, the members of the San Anselmo Department of Works and members of Parisi Consulting. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Sean. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think it's all yours now, Dave.
Okay, thanks, Sean and Brian. I'm David Parisi with Parisi Transportation Consulting, joined here tonight by 2 of my colleagues, Jen Schreiber, Transportation Planner, and Mac Grissel, Transportation Engineer, who've been working hard with me on this project over the last 9 months. And we're really happy to be here tonight. What we're going to do is share with you a presentation, bringing folks up to speed and sharing with you ideas that we've heard about from the community, as well as things that we've come up with, but we really want to spend most of the time near the end gathering your input and your feedback. So what I'm going to do now is move it over to a presentation. We'll go through that. There's going to be a couple polls that we're going to ask you to participate in during the presentation. So that'll be fun and interesting. And again, at the end of the presentation, we're just going to pause and spend the rest of the evening getting your feedback and taking questions. So here we go. I'm now sharing my screen and again, welcome. Our agenda tonight is consists of 6 parts. We're going to recap what we know about current conditions for the hub in the nearby area. We're then going to talk about different measures to address traffic, transit, pedestrians, bikes, and other modes to improve conditions for the traveling public. We're going to then apply those to the hub and show you some ideas. First, we're going to focus on the traffic and transit concepts, and then we're going to share with you an overlay of bicycle and pedestrian ideas that can work with the various traffic options. As I mentioned before, our biggest focus tonight is number 5 here, where we want to really get your input and spend the time there, and then we'll recap with some next steps. As Brian mentioned, this study was funded by a grant from the Transportation Authority of Marin with a local match from the town of San Anselmo, really to look at congestion relief options and ways to provide additional solutions for the other modes besides the automobile. At the end of the day, we're looking at short, medium, and long-term things that can be concepts that can be implemented in the short term, in the next year or two, as well as a blueprint for future options that may be more expensive and take longer and more funding to implement. Our goals, number 1, to relieve traffic congestion or manage traffic congestion to the best we can, improve pedestrian and bicycle connectivity and safety. We are also looking at public transit improvements, and as I mentioned before, developing solutions that actually can be implemented, if not in the short term, at least in the medium to longer term. This map shows you the hub itself, which is at the crossroads of Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, Greenfield Avenue, Red Hill Avenue, and Center Boulevard. And then also there's a larger area that we're studying, because we know some traffic avoids the hub today, and not just automobiles, bikes and pedestrians, and even buses have been rerouted. So we want to understand the effects and the pros and cons of the different options, not just at the hub, but on some of the local streets and intersections as well. The last time we met was in May of 2021, and that was to really solicit ideas from folks about what are some of the biggest issues, the concerns, and really help formulate the goals and objectives for this study. We have spent the last 9 months very, very busy mapping the area, understanding where utilities and property lines are, collecting traffic volumes, including historic ones, looking at travel patterns, and developing ideas for the different modes and starting to evaluate those. So there's been a lot of work done between the last workshop and tonight. And after tonight, and after your feedback, we'll be preparing a report that will go to the town council for a presentation, again, of some of the findings and near, medium, and long-term recommendations. So we're going to actually take a little pause and start our first poll. And Jen, I think you're going to administer this, right? Okay. Here we go. So we'd like you to participate in this poll. There's the first question here is, what is the main purpose, or are the main purposes that you typically travel through the hub for? And you can select up to 2. The choices here are working, shopping or dining, recreational trip, commuting to or from work, traveling to and from other destinations, or some other purpose that we didn't mention. So again, this is a trip purpose. What are your main trip purposes? Select up to 2. And so far, about 40% of you have participated. We have a little log here that tells us. So when we get a few more folks that have entered their feedback, we'll end the poll. Or Jen, do we ask the next question? Do we end the poll or ask the next question?
Yeah, so actually, everyone can fill out the 2 questions that they should be able to see. So what are the purposes that they travel through and how do they normally travel through the hub?
Oh, excellent. Thank you. That's right. There's a second question. So how do you normally travel through the hub? Again, you can select up to 2, walking, biking, or driving. Give it another 20 seconds. And we have 90% of the folks have participated. That's an A in my book. 41, it's 95%. So let's stop that poll and take a look at the results. Jen, are the results up on the screen for folks to see?
Everyone should be able to see the results right now. Yep.
Okay, can you help me out and provide the responses?
Yeah, so for the first question, so what are the main purposes that people travel through the hub? It looks like the #1 response was traveling to or from other destinations. So 78% of the folks who responded to the poll just travel through it to get somewhere else. 54%, so a little over half of participants travel to or through the hub to go shopping or for dining. And around 1/3 of people go through it for recreation. So maybe that's on a bike. Less popular answers included working, commuting to or from work, and others. So sort of catch all for anything else. Going on to the second question, how do you normally travel through the hub? So the vast majority of people travel through by car. So 90% of respondents answered by car. 37% also access the hub by bike, and 22%, so a little over 1/5 of you access the hub by walking. No one actually selected public transportation for this poll.
Okay, thank you. Well, we know people use public transport. There's several bus routes that travel through the hub in the area. So we're going to be looking at some of those ideas as well. Okay, thank you. We're going to recap what we know about the hub with some of the existing conditions for all the different modes. There's a lot of cars that travel through this the intersection on a daily basis. 65,000 cars on our pre-COVID counts travel through the hub on the 4 legs coming through the hub on a weekday. That's a lot of traffic. In fact, there's almost 2 times the current population of the city of San Rafael travels through the hub each day. And it carries so much traffic that we have some little factoids here. About 1.7 times the number of vehicles traveling just westbound on the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, and over 1.2 times the number traveling south on the Golden Gate Bridge. So almost as much traffic as on the bridges. We also know that just on average, and sometimes this is exceeded, the southbound and westbound traffic queues reach the equivalent of 400 yards or 4 football fields as drivers are waiting to get through the intersection during weekday peak times. And this can result in a lot of carbon dioxide emissions, 800 metric tons per year. And if we convert that to number of trees that must grow to capture this amount, that's 39,000 trees just in a year to capture this amount of carbon dioxide. There's a lot of traffic. This map I'm gonna talk about and try to explain. We know that there's a lot of demand for vehicles traveling through the hub from all the different directions. And this graphic is just showing a representation of folks, for instance, going southbound on Sir Francis Drake. And interestingly enough, we know that based on peak times, how much traffic we can count, that's how much traffic is actually being served by the intersection itself. We know often traffic backs up for football fields or more, and we consider what we call backed up demand. But there's more than that. There's traffic that we know would love to get and use the hub because it'd be the most direct route if it had less congestion. So there's drivers today that bypass the hub, take other roads, such as San Anselmo Avenue, shown in the pink car, or there's a term called latent demand. Folks just don't even want to deal with the hub during the peak times that they'd prefer to drive, so they wait out their trip, and that's called latent demand. So all of these different colors are much more than 65,000 cars a day. 65,000 is just what the hub is serving, but we know the demand on a daily basis is higher. We also know as a four-legged intersection with left through and right turn movements, it serves 12 different movements. And some of these are bigger than other movements. And some of them are controlled with a traffic signal. Others are allowed to make turns on a yield condition, such as the northbound right turn from Sir Francis Drake Boulevard onto Red Hill. The signal phasing is very interesting. It actually, each leg is served generally at a different time and gets a green light. During peak times, it's a 3-minute signal cycle. So that's why there are such long delays. And it is not possible with the current arrangements and the traffic volume mix to actually overlap turning movements like you see at typical intersections where maybe left turns in the both two left turns go at the same time, one left turn plus the opposite leg, or through movements that go against each other. It's not really possible to do that at the hub because of the traffic volume differentials and the lane configurations. So that makes it very, very inefficient for moving traffic. We've looked at and conducted our own counts, and we know that traffic flows are different for the different movements. So for instance, the most substantial flows are shown on the left here. That would, for instance, the left turn from Sir Francis Drake, southbound left turn onto eastbound Red Hill Avenue, and the reciprocal movement of the westbound Red Hill Avenue to Sir Francis Drake movement, that right turn. Those are by and far the largest traffic movements on a daily basis going through the hub. There's also major flows shown in orange here, which are lesser than the red flows, but still pretty big. And those are the through movements from Center Boulevard onto Red Hill. Some of those, by the way, would probably be making the left turn from Sir Francis Drake onto Red Hill, but have diverted to taking this route instead. And then of course, the northbound movements along Sir Francis Drake. And you can see that on the last two boxes, there are different lower levels of traffic flows, turning movements shown on these graphics here. And the reason we wanted to look at these is because to make the intersection more efficient, it may be beneficial to reroute one or more movements, particularly maybe some of the minor flows that could be rerouted to change the signal phasing or make the intersection operate at a much better optimization. We also know, besides traffic, that it's really difficult for pedestrians to cross the intersection here. With 3-minute cycle lengths, you're waiting a very long time. The crosswalks are extremely long. The waiting areas are very small in the refuge areas. So it can be very challenging for pedestrians. And of course, for bicyclists too. There's very little separation between bikes and cars. Just like for pedestrians and cars, there's long waiting times. And it's very difficult there's no bike lanes except for one small one for eastbound traffic. Moving on to some other elements of the hub and things we are considering. The Reimagining Creek Park project is a flood mitigation project. There's been a temporary plaza space that was created last spring, and future creek restoration work is planned for this summer. So we're taking this into account because there are some options that would abut Creek Park that are very important to understand the interaction. Here's a graphic that's looking down from at the future Creek Park renovation. And this road up here where the mouse is right now is Center Boulevard. Sir Francis Drake is over to the right. San Anselmo Avenue is the roadway curving here at the bottom. So this shows a conceptual plan of how the Creek Park is planned to be renovated. As I mentioned, we had a workshop that many of you were at back last May, And we spent quite a bit of time talking about issues and getting your feedback on those. We also heard, because we took a poll then, that many of those participants were, use the hub to shop or dine, work, or reach other destinations. And by far, the participants identified congestion reduction as a main priority. But of course, with other important measures that need to be addressed, including improving cyclist safety and improving environmental sustainability. There was a lot of interest and there was some concern about the idea of a potential roundabout. We're going to talk more about that tonight. And there was also the identification of public transit being something that needs to be improved. So as I mentioned before, moving forward, we've been underway with developing the conceptual alternatives and evaluating them. And here's where we are tonight. So we're going to talk about some of these ideas momentarily. So now I'm going to move on to what we are calling an improvement toolkit. So these are measures that many of you brought up at our last workshop, things to consider. And some of these are other measures that we've identified as having a potential for improving multimodal circulation and safety within the hub. The things that we're looking at range from things that are lower cost, such as updating the traffic signal system at the hub and at nearby intersections. And this could mean putting in bigger traffic signal heads, upgrading the traffic signal controllers, the detectors that detect traffic, the mast arm poles, and the visibility and things like that. So that's one of the things that we're looking at if the intersection remains as a signalized intersection. There is a lot of obsolete equipment at the hub today, so that's something we really want to consider. The next area is what's called an adaptive traffic signal update. And this would be not looking at just the hub, but intersections, signalized intersections that feed it. And what adaptive traffic signal does is it adjusts the traffic signal timing and phasing throughout the day, pretty much instantaneously based on traffic demands. So while it may not exactly help during the peak of the peak when we have, oversaturation, it can certainly help during the shoulders of the peak in smoothing out traffic flows. And we'll be talking more about that and its potential application to the hub. We heard about some ideas about removing travel or adding removing parking and adding travel lanes. So for instance, south of the hub, adding the northbound lane has some park removal right now during peak times, but maybe removing it permanently. So there can be additional capacity into the hub. Some of the movements are less than others. So we also have taken a look at rerouting some traffic movements, and we'll show you some ideas for that as well that can actually improve the performance for traffic at the hub. We also heard about the idea, well, gee, there's such a big southbound movement. Maybe some of that could be rerouted along different streets. So we're going to be taking a look at that and showing you an idea along those lines. Here's an interesting idea. It's called a displaced left turn concept, where instead of the left turn movement occurring at the primary intersection, it shifts ahead of the intersection to the other side of the roadway. So at the key intersection itself, it goes through a different signal phasing operation. And tough to understand just by looking at this concept, but we're going to show you an idea that would be related particularly to the hub and how it would perform. Of course, that southbound left turn is really large. So possibly the idea of adding a third southbound left turn lane. Today there's two left turn lanes that go from southbound Sir Francis Drake onto Miracle Mile. So perhaps adding a third, a triple left turn lane, that's on the bottom here, and on the top, widening to provide the 3 lanes to approach the hub. Again, a lot of ideas that we heard at the first workshop and others that we've come up with just based on what we know about traffic volumes at the hub. Of course, in the May workshop, there was a lot of interest in providing a modern roundabout. So we're taking a look at that, and we have some things to report about on that and how it would look and function for the hub. Perhaps eliminating some of the legs of the hub and rerouting traffic a little bit. So we're going to show you an idea along those lines as well. And of course, we've also looked at a concept that was brought up during our May workshop, which particularly for the left turn from Sir Francis Drake onto Red Hill would be to grade separate it either by elevating it or possibly even going underneath the hub. So we'll talk about that. And it's something, again, we just wanted to look at the universe of alternatives. So it's an idea we're going to be considering as well. And again, all of these we're going to want your input on, particularly when we overlay them with how these would look if they were implemented at the hub. But as you know, it's not just about car traffic. There's many impediments for pedestrians and cyclists. And so we are also considering how to cross the street safer. And this can be through higher visibility crosswalks or shorter crosswalks, and providing things such as beacons that you've seen implemented in various parts of San Anselmo and throughout Marin County. There's another type of beacon called a pedestrian hybrid beacon, which is like a traffic light. It actually stops traffic. So these are things we're going to be considering in conjunction with many of the traffic options or on their own. Intersection bulb outs are where we extend corners of a intersection further into the street to improve sight distance and visibility between pedestrians and motorists, but also to reduce the length of a crosswalk. We have several slip lanes, right turn slip lanes at the hub, where cars can have their own lane, and in some cases they can yield or they stop before they turn onto the street. Perhaps repurposing them by eliminating them or making them into something else. So we're going to be looking at some ideas for how to handle the right turns and provide better pedestrian safety. We also got some feedback at the May workshop about, well, gee, there's not as many bikes and pedestrians using the hub now because it's tough to get around. If provided an elevated structure and separated the modes altogether, perhaps that should be considered. So we've taken a look at that, and we have some ideas along those lines as well. Class 4 bicycle lane is a new type of bikeway that is more separated than a regular Class 2, which is typically separated just with paint. Class 4 bikeways can be one-way or two-way, and they can have different types of separation. So we have some ideas we want to discuss with you guys tonight. And we want to look at things such as bicycle signals and other ways to provide better movements and safer separation for cyclists. There are a number of bus routes that go through the hub. Some recently have changed their patterns because the hub is so congested. So we are also going to be looking at what we can do with traffic signaling for buses, where they get their own signal, or perhaps a transit-only lane to make a left turn or a movement through the hub. So these are on the table as well. All right. So there's some other ideas. These are just some concepts that we've heard, we've thought about, and we wanted to apply to potential application at the hub itself. So with that, I'm actually going to now go through and discuss different concepts for traffic and transit, and then for active transportation. And we will come back to these because we really want to get your feedback on the different concepts, and perhaps there's something we didn't think about, and we'd love to know that. First, just to keep it simple for tonight, the performance measures we are reporting for the traffic options really have to do with delay reduction. How much can they really reduce the traffic delay on a percentage basis compared to what people are experiencing today? So for the transit and traffic options, we're going to be giving you a range for each option of what we think that alternative could do as far as reducing delay. We're also going to be providing a relative cost for all these options with a $ symbol from $1 sign to $5 signs shown on the right here, to give you a relative idea of what the cost would be to implement each of these measures. Going back to the middle symbols here, for the bicycle and pedestrian concepts, we are just giving a simple range of level of comfort for the users, 1 star to 3 stars. And I think it'll become pretty apparent which ones are 1 stars, which are 3 stars by the level of separation and convenience for the different users. So without further ado, I'm going to start walking through the different concepts. And again, at the end of this presentation, I'll come back and show you a menu. But we really want to hear from you guys tonight about your thoughts on these different concepts. So first off, adaptive signal upgrade is, if it's applied at the hub in nearby intersections, as I mentioned previously, it'd be putting in new conduits underneath the roadway, detectors, really sensing the traffic all day long, weekdays and weekends, to try to adjust the traffic signals. Now, as I mentioned previously, anytime you have a intersection that's oversaturated, it can't do much. You can only do so much with traffic lights, but during the shoulders of those peaks, we can help even out the traffic flow and make things better. So that's why we're showing in the performance box on the bottom left here that the overall delay reduction would probably be about 5% or less. And the relative cost is $2 signs on a scale of $5 signs. But again, something that could be done relatively quickly compared to some of the other options that I will be sharing with you. All right, the rest of the options tonight will be compared to, it'll be, we're overlaying the map, the existing conditions map, which is showing Sir Francis Drake Boulevard on the southern leg and shooting off to the northwest, Red Hill Avenue, Greenfield Avenue, and then Center Boulevard. So these are the existing conditions, and each map is going to show slightly different or variation over this. So for instance, option 2 is where we would actually remove some of the slip lanes. And skipping back, as you can see, there's a slip lane right here on Center Boulevard, which is actually stop sign controlled to take an eastbound right turn onto southbound Sir Francis Drake. There's a slip lane from northbound Sir Francis Drake onto eastbound Red Hill, etc. So one concept is to actually fill those in and make those more difficult for vehicles to make turns, which actually does not help, to be honest, on the delay reduction side for vehicles, but certainly can provide some safety for different users, particularly pedestrians and bicyclists crossing the street. So we'll be coming back to this, but this is just an idea. Again, from a traffic perspective, it would not provide congestion relief, but we thought it would be important to explain this one. Concept 3. So the idea here would be to widen southbound Sir Francis Drake from about Bridge Avenue all the way down to the hub itself. Today it's just 2 lanes. So this would require a retaining wall by Andronicos. There's also a PGE substation here. It would require reconfiguring and probably reducing the parking at Andronicos. There are some private property impacts. So these are things that are not inexpensive by any means, but it would certainly increase the southbound capacity for Sir Francis Drake. The delay reduction would be higher than the previous option, about 5 to 15% compared to current conditions. And the relative cost, because of the property acquisition, retaining wall, utility impacts, and others, would be moderately high. So it's an idea that we wanted to share with you. It definitely would help relieve overall congestion at the intersection. Concept 4 is very similar, but this third lane, which would be added here, would be converted into a optional lane to turn left, go through, or take a right turn. And by adding that lane to also go left, it would provide a third southbound left turn lane, which means we'd have to have 3 eastbound lanes on Red Hill Avenue. So there'd need to be some widening and reconstruction of the newly redone median just east of the hub, and some grading and changes to the retaining wall system. So the relative cost is also pretty moderately high. It provides a little bit more delay reduction than the previous option, where the third lane would just be added, because in addition, that could be provided to help that left turn going from Sir Francis Drake southbound onto eastbound Red Hill Avenue. So that's concept 3. Just to compare it back to concept 4. Compare it back to concept 3. Concept 3 was widening for a third lane, and that third lane could go through or right. Concept 4 would also have the widening for a third lane, but this lane could go left through or right and would require additional widening on Red Hill. So again, a slightly improved, more delay reduction compared to concept 3. We are going to show you, I think, 8 or so different concepts, by the way. So we'll be able to, could get a little confusing, and we'll create a little index at the end and be able to come back to any of these during questions and answers. The 5th concept was an idea of, well, gee, that through movement that is coming from Sir Francis Drake onto Sir Francis Drake, if that could be somehow eliminated by modifying the roadway geometry, which it could, that would provide a big reduction in delay, also about 5 to 15%. But we know right away that if we did that, that traffic has to go somewhere, and that traffic would most likely go down Bridge, and we need to reconstruct part of Center Boulevard and signalize and provide higher capacity right turn onto Sir Francis Drake. So it's an idea, it's a concept. We were asked to take a look at it. We got this feedback several months ago during our first workshop. And again, it could provide some benefits, but the impacts with it for this one would certainly be pretty large because of the bypass traffic using Center Boulevard. Concept 6, this is where we would combine the idea of a T intersection on the north side with a typical intersection just like 100 feet south of it at the hub proper, and convert and change some of how the movements work at the intersection. This is where we'd employ that idea called the displaced left turn. So just to the east on Red Hill Avenue, there would be another traffic light. And let me show you how this would work with another figure, which is more enlarged. That's right here. So under this concept, traffic that is, for instance, going westbound on Red Hill that wants to go onto Center or wants to go southbound on Sir Francis Drake would cross over a few hundred feet to the east of the hub and line themselves up over here. And what that would do is take that whole traffic movement out of the northern part, or the big traffic movements at the hub itself. Okay. How that would work is that eastbound traffic traveling along Red Hill would also crisscross at this point, again, through a traffic light, and continue on to eastbound traffic. This type of improvement has been used at various locations throughout the US with really good success. And as you can see here, the option would have pretty substantial delay reduction, about 15 to 25% compared to current conditions, but a higher relative cost than the other options that we showed earlier, primarily due to the amount of construction that we required and phasing the project and keeping traffic going during construction of the option. So I'll go back real quick and show you this concept on the previous slide, where it combines slightly different traffic movements, better signal phasing, or more efficient operations at the hub proper by reducing some of the conflicting movements and making those occur a little further to the east. So it looks strange It would take a little bit of getting used to, but this is a type of concept that has seen success at other places on roads and complex intersections throughout the United States. All right, I'm going to keep on moving on. Okay, two more. Here is an idea of a modern roundabout. We've spent quite a bit of time looking at a layout and how it would work, how it would function, and how it would have to look at the hub. And we determined that a roundabout actually could fit within existing right-of-way. We'd have to refine that and confirm that. But so far, it looks like it would fit within the existing footprint of the hub. And it would have to have a configurations somewhat similar to what you were seeing here on this image. In other words, it would have multiple lanes through the roundabout itself because of the heavy traffic volumes that we see at the hub. As a matter of fact, of the 4 different quadrants of the roundabout, 3 would have 2 lanes and 1 would need to have 3 lanes. The western part of the roundabout would have to have 3 lanes. Again, that's due to the heavy left turn movement from Sir Francis Drake onto Red Hill. How roundabouts typically work for pedestrians and cyclists is that these movements are often separated 1 or more car length away from the roundabout. And these could be done as shown here with high visibility crosswalks and splitter islands, possibly even some of the beacon treatments that I showed earlier, or these could be overlaid again with some of the other treatments we're going to show where we can separate bicycle and pedestrian movements. But this is exactly how a roundabout would probably need to look for implementation at the hub. It would have a very high degree of delay reduction, 25% or greater compared to existing conditions, and really high relative cost. And the reason for that is that to construct a roundabout, it requires many different stages of construction and a high cost. So this would be, changing some of the grades, handling traffic during construction and keeping traffic moving. And it would be a multi-phase project, but very promising as far as a delay reduction type of measure. You can also see it would also provide a lot of ability for green treatments and landscaping for the town. And last but not least, tonight we're going to show you a flyover concept, which would separate completely the left turn traffic from Sir Francis Drake onto Red Hill with an above grade structure. It would need to be about 1,200 feet long. It would be about 30 feet above the roadway. It would have a shoulder for vehicles that may break down. It would bypass the intersection. It actually would have the highest degree of potential delay reduction for the intersection because this movement would never need to go through the hub itself. Of course, there would be visual effects with an overcrossing, and we'd love to hear from folks tonight about their thoughts about that. It would certainly affect the Andronicos parking area here, and we need to provide some structure. So be very expensive. It would have a high degree of delay reduction possibility, and it would have some visual impacts. I do want to mention, we did also look at the potential for going under the hub, which would be very similar to this, but underneath the hub. That would be if we had a $6 sign, that's what we would add to it because it would be very expensive. There'd also be water table issues. So that's something that we can discuss more. And it's comparable, but more expensive than an overcrossing. Plus, there are some major utilities underground that would need to be relocated. Okay, I'm getting close to wrapping up on the traffic concepts. Just a quick summary. We shared with you 8 different concepts, as well as the potential for the delay reduction for vehicular delay, and then the relative costs ranging from $1 sign of under $500,000 to $5 signs of $25 million or more. So we do We've been doing some cost estimates. And when we take a break in a few minutes, we're going to want to hear from you about your thoughts of these different ideas. With that, though, we're going to move into to a poll. And Jen, do you want to administer that poll and let's get some feedback?
Yeah, pulling it up right now. So we'd just like to hear real quick, what concepts are you excited about from what you just saw? You can choose up to 3.
And while you're choosing these, again, this is just an informal poll. We have 50 people participating, up to 50 people participating. And we just want to get some feedback tonight. There's plenty of time later for questions and observations and some of your feedback. About half of you have participated so far.
Something happened to us.
About 75% participation so far. Let's give 15 more seconds, Jen, and then let's do a recap. Again, this isn't statistically significant, but it's it's interesting to see what folks are thinking. All right, Jen, you want to summarize?
All right, let's end the poll here. People should be able to see the results now. So 82% of you participated. And it looks like people are most excited about the modern roundabout. So 78% of you picked that as a concept that you're excited about. Next up, about a third of participants liked the T intersection with a displaced left turn, and slightly fewer, so 29%, were excited about the adaptive signal upgrade. A quarter of you were excited about the flyover, and then the rest of the concepts got around 15% or fewer people selecting those, as well as a small percentage of you who were not excited by any of them. So I'm going to stop sharing right now and give it back to you.
Thanks, Jen. Excellent. All right, let's continue on, because now we're going to talk about some of the active transportation concepts. And what we mean by that are ideas that many of these can overlay with the traffic and transit concepts we just showed you. But these are ideas to improve pedestrian and bicyclist connectivity and safety. So first off, though, what we do know currently about pedestrian movements are that there's different ways people want to get around the hub and cross the intersection or at nearby intersections. And you can see from these double-sided arrows some of the major pedestrian movements versus some of the minor pedestrian movements. For instance, right now, we don't see lots of pedestrians crossing at the hub itself. As I mentioned before, long cycle lengths, it's pretty intimidating, super long crosswalks. But we do know that a lot of folks cross over at Bank Street, perhaps, or on Center in front of Andronikos. This is bound to change under different concepts. So this is just a snapshot in time about what we know about pedestrian movements today. Similarly, the bicyclist movements are almost literally all over the map. So for instance, eastbound bicyclists, there is a little bike lane on Center that some folks use to cross going eastbound and then getting onto Greenfield. Conversely, some bicyclists actually cross through the crosswalk going westbound through the Southern Crosswalk. Many cyclists use Greenfield and some of the streets just east of the hub to travel to Bank and then cross and get in onto San Anselmo Avenue or go down to Tunstead and vice versa. So those are some of the movements we know about today. And we know that there's heavy east-west bicycle demand. So we've also looked at some ideas that kind of are incremental, also similar to the traffic ideas, where we've looking at lower cost alternatives first and trying to see what could make sense. So for instance, near-term improvements could include things such as providing better crossings at the hub, putting some of the beacons, installing some of the beacons in some of the locations, putting high visibility crosswalks, maybe the other types of pedestrian hybrid beacons, which are the ones that stop traffic altogether at different locations, including at Essex, maybe over at Madrone, and other ideas. Relatively, these would be low cost, but from a pedestrian level of comfort standpoint, just 1 star out of the 3 that we're using to rate these various options tonight. Concept 2, you've seen before. We showed you that earlier in the traffic concepts, where if nothing else was done to the hub except for removing some of the right turn lanes and repurposing them, this is how things could look. It would mean that pedestrians and cyclists wouldn't have to cross free moving right turns, and they'd be afforded shorter crosswalks and crossings. So again, something that could be done. It definitely would negatively affect traffic flow, but for $2 sign relative cost would certainly improve some of the pedestrian and some bicycle level comfort as well. Our third concept is focused on cyclists and the possibility of providing really a nice 2-way bikeway from Greenfield through Lincoln Park, Bank Street, use a bike traffic signal at Bank and Sir Francis Drake, convert some of the parking area, which we'll show you in a moment, into a 2-way bikeway all the way up to Center and Bridge with some dedicated bicycle infrastructure and whatnot. Really interesting idea. It would include some traffic calming on the streets to the east as well. We're showing this because we think there could be some dedicated bikeway facilities in here. So 2 stars for bike level comfort, $2 signs for relative cost, because there would be some infrastructure improvements that would be needed here. This is the same concept, but showing you what it could look like by converting some of the parking area that is just to the east and north, Imagine Park. This would require, as shown here, converting diagonal parking into parallel parking. So about half the parking spaces would be displaced. And perhaps that could be managed with different parking regulations in other parts of the town. And it would provide a 2-way bikeway, which doesn't exist today. So it could be configured with a dedicated east and southbound bike lane and a shared north and westbound bike lane all the way to Center Boulevard. So there's some promising ideas here that could be done maybe in conjunction with future park phases or as a standalone project. The same concept, we have actually developed a kind of before and after rendering here. The photo on the top left is looking through that parking area today. It's a 1-lane northbound with diagonal parking. This is a photograph that we took just last week that shows what it looks like now. And then this is a photo simulation on the right side of how it could be converted to provide bikeway access. So we'd love to hear about this tonight and get people's feedback. This would not be a huge lift. It would cost several $100,000 to implement, but again, something that could be very possible. To step it up a notch and try to come up with something that actually provides even higher level of comfort for bicyclists and pedestrians, we took a look at the provision of an overcrossing. So an overcrossing that would cross over and provide connections for the major movements, which from a bicycle perspective are east and west, as well as pedestrians. So this would be a crossing that could start on Greenfield and head up and over the hub, and then it would circle back 2 or 3 loops just to make its way down onto, just south of Center Boulevard. This would be only 100 feet less in total length compared to the previous option that I showed you, and there would be grades that you'd have to come up and down. But compared to the previous concept, you wouldn't have to go through a traffic signal or cross Sir Francis Drake. Nonetheless, it would be high cost because of the structural implications and implementability. So love to hear from folks tonight about this idea as well. And then finally, to take it to another level, there were some ideas that were brought up at the May workshop about doing something like they've done in the Netherlands, where above grade bike and pedestrian roundabout was provided. And this photo on the top left is from Eindhoven, Holland, where it has been implemented. We took a look at that too. And so, gee, how would it look possibly here for the hub if there was an elevated structure that provided access from almost every quadrant of the hub for bicyclists and pedestrians? And conceptually, this is kind of what it would look like. These little things that look like ears are actually ramps coming down. They'd have to be designed in compliance with the American with Disabilities Act. There'd be opportunity for elevators or stairs, similar as another option. So this is something we've taken a look at. It would have a very, very, very high cost, but it would provide accessibility to all the different quadrants of the hub. Wow, so we're wrapping up here. We're going to do another poll in a minute on these, but real quick, just to summarize, we've come up with 5 general concepts for pedestrians and bicyclists. They all have different levels of comfort and ascending order and relative cost as well. And I think with that, we're probably going to do a poll. And so we'd love to get some feedback on this, and then we're going to open this up for questions and general feedback. So go ahead, Jen.
All right, so this time, everyone, tell us which concepts out of these active transportation concepts you're excited about. So please feel free to choose up to 2 of these concepts that you are excited about.
About 75% so far. Let's give it another 15 seconds, Jen, and then let's do a recap.
Looks like it may have stopped.
Jen, you want to recap?
All right, let's share the results here. So 86% of you responded to this poll. The number 1 concept here for active transportation was the bicycle bypass route. 65% of you said that you're excited about it. Next up was actually a tie for second place. So the pedestrian connectivity and safety upgrade, as well as the pedestrian and bicycle flyover, both got 35% each. Following that was removing slip lanes and the circular flyover. And again, both of those tied with 14% of respondents excited about those options.
Right. Thank you, everybody. That's awesome. Okay. Wow. We've gone over a lot, but now it's your turn. So we want to hear back from folks. And what we're going to ask you to do on Zoom is to follow these instructions. If you're calling in, you need to dial *9. Otherwise, we'd like you to, on the button that's on the bottom that says reactions, touch that and then hit the raise hand. And I think Dimitri, you're going to help us
Yeah,
right, work through this section. Fantastic.
Dave, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'd just like to tell everybody out there, if you have questions, please keep it to 3 minutes or less. We have about 50 attendees. And please line up now if you want to ask a question so we can see how many people we have and keep things moving efficiently. Thank you.
Also, if you want to type in your question, please do so through the Q&A and not chat. We will answer the Q&A questions sort of mixed in there with the live audience ones. Thank you.
Great. So again, *9 or reactions and raise hand. And here's the things we're looking for tonight. Are there concepts you prefer? Are there certain features you're pretty excited about? What do you like best about some? What don't you like about some of others? And do you have other thoughts as well? So, this is kind of some of the guiding questions we'd love to hear answered tonight. And again, it's your turn now, and Dimitri is going to help select folks in order of their hands being raised. And if it helps, I can share this. I don't know if folks can see it at home, but this is just a real quick grid of the various options, and we can have this open if it helps, or we can shut it down. But let's go ahead and get started, Dimitri.
All right, sounds good. So I'm just gonna go from the top here. I have Matthew H. I'm gonna allow you to talk, but please introduce yourself and let us know where you live. Thank you. Matthew H., you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hello, good evening. Thank you, David, for tonight's presentation. It was excellent and informative, and the graphics were laid out very clearly, and there's a lot to think about here. So a lot of good ideas. By the way, I'm Matt Hartzell with WTB TAM, and this isn't the last I'll have to say. I'm excited by the roundabout. I'm excited about the bike detour and the bike bridge. We actually had a working group with a lot of the people at this current meeting a couple of weeks ago in the field, where we talked about this, particularly the bike routes, and particularly we talked about the westernmost end, where this proposed bike path through the Creek Park parking lot would end at the intersection of Bridge and Center. And I was wondering if in the last 2 weeks, if there's been any more progress on the design of what would happen at that intersection, because I think that's a really, really important intersection. It's right now quite dangerous to ride through as a bike. So we wouldn't want to build this beautiful new bikeway and then have it end at a dangerous intersection. We'd want to make sure that there's a continuous, safe pathway through that intersection and then onward towards San Anselmo Avenue, which of course is the main bike route west to Fairfax and San Geronimo Valley and Point Reyes Station. So I'm just curious if there's been any new information about that intersection there. And then I also had a more general question about kind of the feasibility of these different concepts with potential funding sources looking forward, because some of these are obviously much more, and I'm talking about the vehicle concepts as well as the ATP concepts. Some of these are much more expensive than others. There's a lot of potential funding sources coming down from the federal government and state government in the near future, some of which is more tied towards active transportation than traditional vehicular transportation. So I'm wondering, for example, the flyover concept number 8, that's mainly serving vehicular flow, it's probably not going to be eligible for active transportation funding. Do you anticipate funding sources being available for this town of San Anselmo and the county for a concept like that? Thank you.
I can try to take the funding part, Dave, if you want to answer the other parts.
Great. Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and start, Sean?
Okay, so funding right now, obviously we have no funding really for any of this. The hope would be that funding could become coming from TAM or other sources eventually, especially once we identify what can or can't be done. Some of these concepts that you've seen are very expensive, such as like the Hoven Ring or a roundabout. Right now there is no funding. The hope would be we would go from this study that we're doing to looking at what the community really wants when we go to council too, and see if they want us to move forward on looking for funding options.
And then to answer your question, Matt, about the active transportation concept number 3, yeah, we have been looking further on the west end, and we have some ideas. We wanted to wait for tonight's meeting to see what type of the reaction there was to that overall. concept. And, we're going to regroup after tonight's meeting and see which ones we maybe do a little bit more refining left, with our remaining budget before we go back to the city council. So we do see some promise for that one. That's pretty exciting. Dimitri?
All right. Next, we have Jay Sever. You should now be able to unmute yourself. Jay, please introduce yourself. Thanks.
Hi, it's Jean Severinghouse. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Very impressive. I really like all your fat and thin arrows to show the volumes of traffic, both pedestrian and vehicular. It's very useful. Thank you. I have a question. I can actually do bicycle concept 3 right now, coming from San Rafael and going towards Fairfax. But no matter what I try to do, I can't really get out onto San Anselmo Avenue without getting off and walking across a bridge, or it's very dangerous and difficult to cross Center Boulevard mid-block, even with the flashing light, which I really appreciate. And it's far worse on a bicycle. So I'm just completely confounded by ending on Center Boulevard. So if you can find a way to route through the new parkway on to San Anselmo Avenue, for example, I would really be more interested in that. And I don't know about losing all that parking next to the park. That seems kind of precious, but anyway, I can already do that the way it is. I don't need a lot of money spent to do that, but I would like money spent to get me down to San Anselmo Avenue. Thank you.
Thanks for that feedback.
Thank you. All right. Up next, we have Alan W. You should now be able to unmute yourself, Alan.
Okay, Alan Weiler in Lagunitas. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I drive and bike through that area on a frequent basis and have been doing so for years. And I just wanted to offer a couple of observations. I love all the hard work that's gone into this. I do think it's a bit tangential, though, to the actual problem. I think that a lot of people on this call will be aware of studies where when you open up more roadways, you just get more cars filling the roadway. And so more people would choose to travel these routes, and you wouldn't actually change the travel time. You would just end up with more cars. I believe the goal is to get people out of their cars and into electric bikes, bicycles, small scale electric vehicles. Think like a closed golf cart. Think electric jitneys. And one of the studies that I saw was something like 20% of all trips through Marin are to pick up and drop off children at schools. And so spending the money on, say, door-to-door electric jitneys would perhaps be a better use of both our air quality and our roadways. So I would like to see the effort go into solving a different problem, getting people out of their cars, opening up bikeways, certainly. And then the traffic would just flow because fewer people would be driving. I don't think that is actually the problem. And so that's what I wanted to contribute to the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right. Up next, we have Dave T. Dave T, you should now be able to unmute yourself. Thank you. Dave Troop, you should now be able to unmute yourself. Dave.
Hello, can you hear me, please?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. So thank you for your very thorough presentation. I thought it was great. I have several what I think are serious reservations with the roundabout approach, even though it has a lot of popularity among the voters. First is that for pedestrians or bicycles to cross through this, based on your graphic, it looks like it's necessary for them to cross the traffic flow without the benefit of any traffic signals. So to me, this is a safety danger for both pedestrians and bikes. Second, I question the roundabout's ability to handle heavy traffic volumes at peak times. I think certainly your traffic your computer models must have done their job, but what can happen at heavy volumes is if you have traffic approaching the roundabout from one direction, they can dominate and make it difficult for cars to enter from the other directions. I've got experience with this in the city of Doha, Qatar, which has many roundabouts. And due to the situation I described, they actually had to retrofit and add some standard traffic lights to some of their roundabouts to solve that problem. A third issue I have is with the major disruption to traffic patterns that a big construction project like this would entail. And fourthly, I think it's very, very expensive. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dimitri, let me address a couple of those things real quick.
Mhm.
Roundabouts, particularly multi-lane roundabouts for pedestrians, bicyclists, can be challenging to cross and at the roundabout itself. And some of the tools that could be available are some of the beacons that I mentioned previously. But that's also why we've developed separate active transportation concepts that can be overlaid, perhaps, for instance, like the Bank Street crossing or a grade separated crossing. So think of these things as kind of mix and match a little bit. And then regarding the layout of the roundabout, we have on our team well-renowned roundabout design operations design firm that definitely ran some modeling. And that's why you see the layout like we have it with the third lane in that western quadrant because of the heavy traffic movement. So it's been carefully laid out. If it got legs and it became something that was favored in the future, certainly more work would need to be done. But yeah, it's not a single lane roundabout by any stretch of the imagination. It would have multiple lanes with some bypass lanes, for instance, in the westbound Red Hill to Sir Francis Drake as well. So it's pretty complicated, but kind of elegant at the same time with its movements and landscaping. More work would need to be done. Back to you, Dimitri.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we have Warren W. You should now be able to unmute yourself, Warren.
Hi, everybody. This is Warren Wells, Policy and Planning Director for the Marin County Bicycle Coalition. Just wanted to thank the town and the consultants for involving us in this process. Like Matt said earlier, we did a walkthrough with the town and David and his folks a couple weeks ago, and that was very helpful. So a lot of appreciation there. Just wanted to express our support for the roundabout and the bike bypass primarily, though I'm open to the grade separated flyover for the bike ped access. One additional benefit to the roundabout is safety, which again is a big priority for us, and not just for people on bikes, but people in cars too. There have been a number of serious traffic collisions at this intersection. It's not the most dangerous in Marin, but roundabouts on the whole tend to be much safer for drivers than signalized intersections. Yeah, I really do want to focus. This was touched on in the presentation. I'm glad you mentioned it on pedestrian safety. That the intersection as it is very difficult to traverse as a pedestrian, and then kind of gets avoided by bicyclists. So for bicycling, I love the bypass. I mentioned some comments we talked the other day about improving the experience for bikers on Lincoln and Bank, and actually, as with respect to the route to the parking lot, I think an earlier caller, Jean, mentioned some concern for parking. I did read the parking study that the town developed a few years ago, and showed there is plenty of parking in San Anselmo if it's better managed. I think that parking right there is all-day merchant parking and 4-hour parking, and that could be better managed. So I big fan of the bypass. I would love to see, that perhaps turned into a shared space that would reduce conflict between westbound bicyclists and people trying to park their cars. Otherwise, really great job. Keep up the good work. Look forward to being involved in this going forward.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Now I'd like to take some time maybe to answer the Q&A that got typed in. I'll just start from the first one there for a little bit. So the first question was, are adaptive signal systems using artificial intelligence?
Yes.
All right.
Definitely. Yeah. And the adaptive signal systems keep on evolving. So at some point they will outthink us.
Second question, do we have any data on the walk, bike traffic on eastbound sidewalk along Andronikos?
We have some traffic, if we have some counts for peak hour use through the intersection that is approaching on that sidewalk. I don't have it at my fingertips. We do know though, for all pedestrian and bike volumes at this intersection, or we do feel it's quite suppressed because of the unattractiveness of the intersection itself. But that's something we can take a further look at. But we think the demands and would be a lot higher if better facilities were provided.
Gotcha. All right, number 3. Was there any consideration of combining the roundabout with the bicycle/ped overcrossings, perhaps with its own roundabout above the car roundabout? That was with a smiley face.
Yeah, like I said before, the way we've looked at this is we're solving multiple problems, and we're looking at potentially mixing and matching, traffic and transit concepts with the various active transportation concepts. So we want to continue hearing from folks, and some of you have already expressed this, like, hey, I like this traffic concept and this bike or ped idea, and some of these can be blended together.
Gotcha. Okay. This one is for you, Dave. Can you please discuss what would happen upstream/downstream for any particular concept? Are we just pushing the problem to another intersection?
That's a great question, particularly on the traffic perspective. When we're showing potentially reducing delay by 30%, we definitely want to know, would that just shift the traffic downstream to another intersection? And that'd be part of some of our next steps to understand, can the entire system accommodate, extra, peak traffic? And that's also why we've looked at the ranges of delay reduction. So, because at the end of the day, maybe the system can accommodate reduction or increase in traffic of that's aligned with a 20% reduction, but not the 30%. So, or other little improvements would be needed at other locations. So we're very aware of that. And that's why we're studying the different incremental capacity changes. And they're to be honest, there's going to need to be more work done in that regard.
Thank you. And are these concepts mutually exclusive? And what is the total budget?
Well, I'll let Sean handle the budget part, because but totally no, they're not mutually exclusive. As I mentioned, some of these could be phased. Even some of the traffic options could be phased and staged over time from one to another. Some of the lower cost, like upgrading the traffic lights, could be done relatively in the near term. Maybe some modest improvements and phased over time. Active transportation options as well. Sean, back to you on budget. There's nothing right now. We're trying to figure that out, right?
Like we have no budget, and some of these are quite big ticket items. So to be determined once we figure out what we want to do and where we can get money from.
Great, thank you both. And I'll take the last question for now from the Q&A section, and then we'll go back to the live audience. So do we have any information on the impact to the local businesses with the various proposals? You mentioned the Andronikos parking lot, but what about the other small businesses?
So right now we've been focused on the major goals of the study. How much can these options reduce traffic? What better connectivity can they provide for buses, pedestrians, and bikes? And what are some of the potential access and right-of-way impacts? So as the study progresses, or some alternatives are eliminated and others are pursued in the future, I think additional effects, pros and cons, will need to be evaluated.
Great, thank you. All right, now back to our live audience. Patrick, you should now be able to unmute yourself, Patrick.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Seidler. I'm also from WTB-TAM, whose headquarters are in Mill Valley. And I'd like to thank the mayor and the city of San Anselmo for working on this project and advancing it. It's high time. I had the opportunity to grow up in Marin County. And so I've seen this has been a problematic area since I was a kid, which was a real long time ago. I'd also like to thank Parisi Engineering. I got to tell you, that was one of the best presentations I've seen. I think David's really captured the Zoom video presentation for me. Really impressive, David. Congratulations. What I'd like to do is ask all those in attendance and all those that are listening to be aware of the progress that's going on with the North-South Greenway. SMART invested $11 million. They're going to be doing that over the course of the next year to advance every segment that's not completed in Marin and Sonoma County and prime it for being shovel ready so that it will be available for some of the $500 million that the state of California has in the governor's budget. And then I'd also like to identify for the audience San Rafael's commitment to the Cross Marin Trail and its 3rd Street project, which I think is an 11 or $13 million project. And they're building an anchor of the Cross Marin Trail there. They're building a place that they actually looked at the 2010 study that basically designed, that has a separated bikeway from Fairfax all the way in through San Anselmo, through the hub, all the way into San Rafael. And so San Rafael is now given San Anselmo an anchor to go to. And I urge all of the participants and all of those that are active in advancing this project to keep that vision in mind. Central Marin deserves to complete its systems like the Cross Marin Trail, just like the North-South Greenway. Remember, transportation is the movement of people and all things. It does not only include cars. Central and West Marin received $0, even though they pay for the SMART tax. So let's build the Central Marin system. The 2010 shows you the non-motorized part of it. Let's build the sustainable mobility system. Let's focus on the sustainable mobility system and advance the alternatives that optimize that. The Cross Marin Trail and improve the auto issues as well. So I urge you to keep your eye on the bold view, increased mobility, decrease congestion, and drastically increase the share of sustainable mobility. Keep the big vision. Opportunity is in hand, and let's make that active transportation a success. Thank you very much for all your efforts in that direction.
Thank you. All right, let's see who's next. Ann P, you should now be able to unmute yourself, Ann.
Hi, thank you. I want to say that was a great presentation, and you made a lot of very complex, disparate information very graspable. So thanks for doing that. I just had a question I wanted to clarify. So the priority of this, it's a 2-pronged study. So it's reducing congestion at the hub as well as a multimodal mobility study, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I just wanted to say, in terms of looking at the options, my 2 cents here is that the flyover option for the intersection, I feel like that's there just for us to have something to reject. So I'm rejecting it. And I'll tell you why. I don't think we should have anything like an Embarcadero freeway, built across the gateway to West Marin. One of the wonderful things about coming up either to Francis Drake or the Miracle Mile is seeing that vista, seeing Red Hill and that whole Ross Valley kind of sweep before you. So we're very unfortunate if we blocked that. And that includes putting a Hoven ring over a roundabout. I do, though, like the idea when it comes to the bicycle and pedestrian mobility of a pedestrian bike bridge that crosses Sir Francis Drake, as long as it's not obstructive and it, scenically unites with that sort of view of Red Hill. I don't think we need a lot of hardware there. We don't need any kind of obstruction of the view. It would be sort of criminal. And I wanted to ask on I think it was option number 3 on the bike lanes. So there were 2 and 3 were both showing bicycles running through Creek Park, and one was through the back parking lot where the merchants park. Was the 3rd option, were the bikes coming up San Anselmo Avenue on that side of the park with the reduced parking?
We've heard some feedback about that, particularly from Gene about the potential to bring them to San Anselmo Avenue. So that's always an option. I think some of the crossovers from the park to San Anselmo Avenue, we'd have to make sure they're public, and not some of the private access points. So that's an idea that
Okay.
we've got some feedback on.
And Anne, we are looking at, like, potentially could we reconfigure the parking lot through Creek Park to allow better bike passage through there going in both directions.
Okay, yeah, I think that would be great in the parking lot. It does concern me, and this has come up before, anything, because it looked like in the mock-up that it was bike lanes and one-way traffic there along that part of San Anselmo Avenue, which the town has rejected before and does not want.
Yeah, that cross section, that rendering was not
Yeah.
for San Anselmo Avenue. It was the one way, the parking aisle that's just currently one way for traffic.
Oh, cool. Okay, then
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
fine. All right, well then, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's see. Next we have Sue S. Sue, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. Good evening. I'm Sue Saunders and I'm on the San Anselmo Climate Action Commission, but I'm here speaking only for myself. I just want to thank everybody for all the effort and thought and the wonderful presentation. And, it's basically above my pay grade. I think this is something that, all of you are going to have to figure out what is the best way. We definitely need something to happen. And I want to thank the Public Works Department, the Town Council, and Brian Colbert, who's been on the TAM board, and I know has been really involved in trying to get some sort of solution. And I just wanted to say that, I know that most of the traffic happens during school commute times. And my ideal would be for us to create some sort of safe way for kids to get to and from school without being driven in a car. So I sort of envision San Anselmo Avenue being shut down to and from school hours, that kids could ride, walk their bikes safely. And that would cut down on a lot of the car congestion. And I know I never let my kids ride their bikes to school because of our narrow streets. And so anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there, that we definitely need some kind of high-tech solution like this that you've all presented so well. But we also need some way to get kids out of cars to and from schools in a safe way that parents will trust. My kid's going to be okay if I let them walk or go on their bike. They're not going to get hit by a car, and they're going to be, it's going to be very visible, so I don't have to worry about anyone approaching them. So just as a parent and as someone who, witnesses the backup when it's pickup time at schools or drop off, the backup of cars is insane. So, a lot of this could be solved if we could get kids and parents feeling safe about having their kids walk or bike to school. But, that's just a low-tech solution. This was a really great presentation. I know we need to do something, and whatever that something is, I'm going to have to leave up to the experts. So thank you, all of you, for all of this and all your work. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. All right, let's take some more questions from the Q&A. There's quite a few still left there. So let's see, are there any examples, ideally video, real world examples of the modern roundabout? The current situation is so difficult to navigate. The idea of a roundabout is intimidating. Do you have anything that will make the roundabout more appealing?
That's a great question. And with the popularity of modern roundabouts, and they're really picking up steam and have been for the last decade or two in the US, there are videos of real world examples. And based on the poll we had tonight, I think it would make sense for us to find some of those and make those available. So great question.
Okay, thank you. And then another one about the roundabout. If the roundabout results in a continuous flow of traffic, will it be accompanied by a light/crosswalk at Essex so bikers/pedestrians can cross there with potentially no gaps in traffic that are now caused by stoplights at the hub?
That's great comment. Those are the things we want to hear tonight. We are looking at whole bunch of different ideas that can be mixed and matched. And with a roundabout, you definitely would want to create gaps, you know, for cross traffic as well as bikes and peds. So that certainly could be on the table.
I'd like just to add that we are looking at a crosswalk there separately from this study.
Great, thank you both. Did you consider eliminating vehicular access to Center Street in and outbound from Sir Francis Drake? It seems that this section of Center at Andronicos does not connect well to the rest of the Center Street beyond San Anselmo Avenue.
Yeah, I believe we have. We've looked at a whole bunch of ideas. Not all of them are presented tonight. By looking at, again, the minor, potentially eliminating some of the minor and more moderate traffic movements to try to improve the hub. And some of those would remove movements to and from Center via Sir Francis Drake. We'll have to kind of dust those off, and we can include that in our final report about some of the effects of that.
And Dave, I'd just like to add that we do have bridge funding coming up that would look at doing a pass through or even a roundabout at Center and Bridge Street that would connect all of that better. So that's something that is down the road and is a separate project too, but does tie into this.
Yeah, thanks, Sean.
Thank you. We have another one here. I'm going to summarize, but basically, have you looked at what the traffic options will do to the current rate of speed for the vehicles on Sir Francis Drake? This person has concerns about cars not stopping, even at the flashing lights at Mondrone. So the speed is a concern here.
Well, under all the options, there'll still be traffic controls at the hub. So we know that none of these options are going to totally solve the traffic congestion. So I think there's still going to be a constraint. You know, the speeding doesn't necessarily occur through the hub itself, but on the streets approaching and departing from the hub. So, you know, we do need to take a holistic approach, and some of that could be solved, for instance, or not solved, but addressed through some of the signal timing, adaptive signals control implementation, and things such as that. So thanks for bringing this up. And I think it does behoove us to look beyond the hub and consider, you know, some of the effects.
And then we are changing the flashing signal at Saunders, and I believe Madrone, but I'm not sure if Scott, are you here still?
Saunders is, yeah.
Saunders are changing, and
yeah, just Saunders.
Just Saunders. So we are changing it at Saunders, and we could look at upgrading the one at Madrone too, which is more of a red flashing light. But
right, it's going to be an active hybrid beacon. So instead of a yield control, it will be a stop control with a red light.
Great, thank you. Can the roundabout serve large delivery trucks and buses?
Absolutely, yeah. The layouts are developed so that they could serve semi-trailers and of course buses. So that's part of the whole design. And roundabouts, also the modern roundabouts, have aprons in the inside, so even super large vehicles can be accommodated.
Great, thank you. Here's a comment. Thank you for all your hard work. When a concept is implemented and traffic is improved, won't that just eventually invite more traffic to the area?
That's why we showed the graphic earlier about the different types of demands. There's so much demand right now. Traffic is taking alternative routes, increase in the vehicle miles traveled, and some of the greenhouse gas emissions as well. So I think at the end of the day, it's about how to manage traffic, not necessarily increasing capacity through the hub and the nearby intersections, but how can it be managed to accommodate, you know, the reasonable demand? So it's a good question. It is that balance. And that's something that will be further addressed in the traffic work to understand that question a little bit better, or the answers to that.
Great, thank you. Another one about roundabouts. Would cars entering or exiting the roundabout concept be required to yield to pedestrians in the crosswalks on the various roundabout arms?
Yeah, motorists are, you know, that's by law, they are to yield to pedestrians. There are roundabouts where there have been beacons installed and even stop lights in some cases, but for the most part, modern roundabouts are yield controls for the pedestrians. And also the vehicle, keep in mind that it's probably hard to see from that graphic. But at roundabouts, the intent is to have slower vehicle speeds as you're traveling through the roundabout, better sight lines, so that it's a safer configuration for all.
Gotcha. Thank you. All right, let's get back to live audience here. We have a few more hands. Let's get to Christopher. Christopher HL. He just lowered his hand. Never mind. Pascal, you should now be able to unmute yourself. And we will get back to Christopher. Pascal?
Yes, hi there. Thanks for choosing me. And I've really enjoyed this presentation and all the comments. I think there's some really sharp points out there. One thing I missed, and maybe it's because I missed the beginning of the presentation, is was mass transit or buses at all considered in the round, all of the possibilities? I mean, we talk a lot about pedestrians and cyclists and cars, and I mentioned this at meetings before, is that it's a real pity that the fantastic bus stop across from Andronicos is so underused, and that the bus stops have been moved to parts of Sir Francis Drake where it actually blocks parking spots and people uncovered, unlit, and when they do stop during rush hour, they block traffic. So it's a little clumsy, and I realize that that wasn't necessarily the town's option. I don't know, but I hope that that is something that could be considered and perhaps addressed or fixed, because it's a loss that you don't use what you've got. But aside from that, I think that the roundabout is a cool idea. One of the previous speakers mentioned that here's our chance. Maybe it's time to go big or home. Thanks.
Let me address the transit part real quick, because we've spent quite a bit of time talking with representatives from Golden Gate Transit and Marin Transit, understanding their needs, their concerns, the fact that some of their bus stops they've relocated outside of the hub because going in and out of the hub has added too much travel time. So yes, the concepts, particularly the traffic and transit concepts, do accommodate transit to differing levels through the use of bus-only lanes, bus-only traffic lights, and things such as that. The roundabout would accommodate buses as well. So a big part of this study is looking at public transit access.
Great, thank you. All right, and then now back to Christopher. Christopher, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. I believe I'm online now. Great. Well, okay. So thanks to San Anselmo politicians, staff, and consultants. I'm the Velo Club Fairfax Advocacy Director, founder of the Marin County Bike Coalition, not an official at this time, and I was original assistant director for the Marin Netherlands Bicycle Technical Exchange Program. So I have just a little quick list here. I'll just try to rush through it so we can have it as a matter of public record. I didn't see any kind of check-in for the public at the beginning of the meeting, and so that made me nervous. In all the Parisi's number 2, the Parisi traffic analysis did not show level of service. When I was a planning commissioner, we analyzed traffic, studies, and there was always a level of service for the different areas. And I think the point brought up about number 3, linked wayfinding, the limited wayfinding for bicyclists, I think it's a little bit of a red herring. I think it's the town, Sean and Scott can do that now if they wished. And then I didn't see, as another meeting protocol, number 4, there was no count of how many people from the public were here. And that also made me a little nervous. Sorry about that. Number 5, I was very disappointed there was no official response to the Velo Club Fairfax proposal for Class 3 infrastructure at the San Anselmo-Ross border. There's a street there that crosses San Anselmo Avenue and debouches into Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. And when I recruited and worked with Deb Hubsmith, one of the key concepts we had was connectivity. And in my mind, connectivity mandates bicycle lanes on improved streets. And if you can't fit a bicycle lane in, use a Netherlands style lane, which is tinted pavement of 30 inches in width. And that was one of the big takebacks we got from going to Netherlands, was seeing these Class 3 infrastructure of simply painted pavement. So updating the traffic signals at the hub. Well, I'm not sure how the cost effective that would be, but I think the adaptive signal update is a great idea, and I think that's what's really needed. I'm cautious about bulb outs. My third point on this section. Bulb outs decrease bicycle safety, in my opinion. I've been riding through there for 49 years. I have some experience. I'm not in favor, my fifth point, generally of class 4 lanes with a separated part going through Creekside parking area. It could be a great idea, but I'm a little nervous about it in traffic because it limits our mobility to move from lane to lane and in and out through traffic, as it were. I know most people don't ride like that, but we try to go with the flow. Not sure there's enough riders to meet the cost benefit analysis.
Chris, your time is up, so please wrap it up.
Okay, I am. Slip lanes need to stay. And here you go, 20 more seconds. I think in essence, we're reinventing the wheel. The problem is single occupancy vehicles. The Bike Coalition promotes encouragement of bicycling. And the roundabout is pretty scary for bikes. The Essex Avenue sounds good for whatever you can do there, Sean. And the last but not least, the most important thing now for us as bicyclists is the bridge between Sir Francis Drake Boulevard and San Anselmo Avenue. If you could somehow fine tune that whole traffic light ramp bridge crossing the sidewalk onto San Anselmo Avenue, I mean, that's the way we go. And if you could do something to help with that, it would be much appreciated. Thanks again.
Thank you, Chris. I'm not sure, there is one question about a red herring. I will just say that part of this meeting will be what things can we do, which Dave said earlier, that are the low-hanging fruit. And there are other things that we're looking at doing either in relation to or separate from this, like even improvements at Creek Park, along with, Reimagine Creek Park and other things throughout town that we're looking at that may be done in conjunction or completely separately with this.
Great. All right. Let's get back to the Q&A portion that people typed in. This is more of a comment, but to reiterate the need for the mid-block crossing at Essex, there's a whole neighborhood up the hill on the north side of Red Hill Avenue that is trapped on the wrong side of Red Hill. They can walk to the hub, but this is a lousy sidewalk with many dangerous driveways and cross streets. We have been hit by the cars on the sidewalk more than 4 times. Let's see, another. Is the roundabout definitely happening? So this is just the concepts, right? Nothing is decided.
These are all just concepts, yeah.
All right, next question. Is it possible to implement all the number 1 pedestrian and bike improvements now, the low-hanging fruit? And if not, what is the barrier?
Sean, you want to take that? I mean, again,
I can try to take it.
Yeah, it's about funding. Yeah.
It's about funding, and I will say that when and where we can, we are constantly trying to look at ways to improve multimodal transportation from pedestrians and bikes and so on. And so we will continue to do that and look for funding. We recently applied for a $2 million grant to add bike lanes to Center Boulevard. So we are constantly trying to look at things we can do.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have another one here. Optimized use of traffic lights may be sufficient to alleviate congestion without the expense of a roundabout or flyover. Also, roundabouts do not provide the benefit of traffic calming. In fact, during lower traffic periods, cars would be more likely to speed through the intersection, creating hazards. Finally, let's see, when overwhelmed by traffic, it can result in the reintroduction of traffic lights to control flow, as it happened with the many roundabouts in the UK. Any comments on that?
No, there was a comment earlier about level of service and whatnot. And it's kind of related to this. We do know the levels of service at each of these intersections. Tonight, just to keep it simple, we wanted to relate it more back to the reduction in delay, the potential, because I think it's easier to understand. The current level of service, by the way, at the intersection is F. It's the worst it could be. And even under some of these options, it would remain at F or even E, but the number of hours of congestion would be reduced. So coming back to this question, the roundabout, none of these are going to solve the problem for traffic and congestion at the hub, but they can manage the congestion at different levels.
Great, thank you. And I have last Q&A here that's typed up. Would the new landscaping on Red Hill Road need to be removed if we went with the concept with the extra light?
Okay, that's the concept with the extra light that I think Bridget is talking about is the T intersection with displaced left turn. There would need to be some changes to that, and there's other opportunities where more landscaping could be provided. So right now, these are conceptual in nature. So we'd look for greening opportunities as much as practical, but yes, on the west ends of that landscaping, some modifications would definitely need to occur.
Gotcha. Thank you. All right, and it looks like we're wrapping up here. I'm out of the typed in Q&As. I'm going back to live, and we have, I think this is might be a follow-up. If anybody else wants to speak that hasn't spoken before, please raise your hands. And I'm gonna let Matthew H. Unmute yourself.
Hi, Matt from WTB TAM again, and this is a follow-up to my previous comment about the bike detour route. And I think I would recommend that you look as a possible option, instead of having the bike route end at Center Boulevard and have to go through that intersection, try to find a way for it to go through Creek Park. And I know that the current plan for Creek Park, that wouldn't really work. But I think there might be, if the wooden pedestrian bridge that's due directly east of the Creekside Pizza and Tap Room building, if that were a little bit wider, just a few feet wider, I think you could designate a bike space and a pedestrian space. I know you don't want to have bikes and pedestrians causing too many conflicts with each other in the space of a city park. So it could be a really slow bike. There could be good signage and wayfinding to make sure bikes are slowing down, and striped paint on the wood to make sure that they're not running over pedestrians. But that would put them into San Anselmo Avenue, which is a class 3 bike route, and the direct route all the way to Fairfax and Point Reyes. So I think that would be a much safer way, and I hope that you'll look at that as a possible option and coordinate with the town of San Anselmo and their Creekside Park plan to see if that's a possibility. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, Dimitri, I've also noticed that there are some comments in the chat.
I think let me see. Any questions? These are mostly comments, but so there's one I see that's a question. Wouldn't the roundabout severely impact northbound traffic on Sir Francis Drake during rush hour?
The modeling shows it would not. Actually, it would actually reduce the queuing and delays for northbound traffic.
Gotcha. Okay, I think that's about it for Q&A, chat, and live audience. So I'm going to stop my screen share, and I'll let you folks do the wrap up.
Fantastic. All right. I think we have the presentation still there. It says we want to hear from you. You've all been addressing these different concepts.
You might want to reshare that. I'm not sure if it's on or not.
And Dave or Scott.
Got it. You're right. Here we go. Okay, go ahead.
We'll share this presentation on our website, right, Scott?
Yes. So we'll have. Sorry, not Scott, but we'll have the video posted, and the link will be on the town's website.
Along with this PowerPoint, I'm assuming too, right? Which I guess will be in the video if you want to watch it that way.
Yeah, we can provide it as a separate PDF so it's manageable.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to wrap up again, thanks everybody for your feedback. There's been a lot of hard work, and a lot of these ideas came from you. And again, we appreciate all the input on the different concepts. The next steps for the project is to take this feedback and mix and match and try to come up with the recommendations for short, medium, and long-term solutions or options that can be considered by the town council. We're going to take a closer look at some of the potential construction costs after we kind of mix and match and blend things together. And then our scope of work is to prepare a report and a presentation kind of summarizing the results and bringing this presentation back to the town of San Anselmo's town council to discuss the findings and the recommendations. And I think that's a couple months off, and the public will be well notified about that. So you can come and make further statements and comments at that time. Of course, then it'll be as far as trying to figure out what are the priorities and where the funding can be found. And we hope to work with Shauna Scott and Dimitri and the town on that to try to make some of these idea is a reality.
And Dave, I'd just like to thank you, and I know Dave Donner, the town manager, for the great presentation to you and Jen and Mac. I think it was a really good, informative presentation. So thank you. I don't know if Councilmember Colbert would like to say anything to close out.
Yeah, sure, Sean. No, again, I want to thank you and your whole team, Dave and their whole team, for the valuable and good work that they brought to this. I do want to acknowledge that Mayor Feynman joined the Zoom, as did Bill Whitney from TAM. I know he was instrumental in partnering with the folks here on the call in providing some of the hard data. I think, we've really continued to lay the foundation to think about the future. I really enjoyed the emphasis on mobility. I think it's really important that we continue to focus on our school kids and pedestrian access. And the last thing I'll appreciate is the big vision and the thought, right? We haven't touched the hub in many years. So we should really be thinking about, what will the future of transportation / mobility look like? For me, I think the roundabout is really exciting. And I just know from talking to people in the community, there's a whole lot of exciting about the possibility of a floating roundabout and how it integrates into the landscape and the streetscape. And with that, thank you so much for everyone for their hard work.
Thank you.
Great. And this slide is showing where you can get more information from the town's website or provide additional feedback via Scott Snyder and his email address. So thank you, everybody. And more information and next steps will be available on the city's or the town's website in the near future.
Have a good night.
Thank you.